Hey guys, tonight we're taking a slow, shadowy walk into the world of secret switches, and something that's quite literally chained to the wrist of a man whose job is to be invisible unless the world is ending. You're following the black-gloved hand of a man in a tailored suit, walking precisely 2 steps behind the President of the United States. But your eyes aren't on him. They're on the suitcase. It's sleek matte black, the kind of thing you might assume carries boring old papers or some travel snacks. But then you notice it's not being carried so much as worn. A steel cord handcuff hugs the bodyguard's wrist tightly enough to imprint. The briefcase never leaves his side. Not when he sits, not when he eats. And certainly not when the president speaks waves or naps on Air Force One. You know how this ends, right? Or how it could end. With a click, a flash, a white light brighter than anything your brain can process. Then silence. You probably won't survive this bedtime story, but let's keep going anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing bedtime roll across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing behind a velvet rope somewhere near the back of a presidential crowd. Flashbulbs pop. Applause surges like a wave. The president walks by, and right there just behind him is him. The man in black. Sunglasses even though it's cloudy. Broad shoulders, buzz-cut jaw like it was carved from leftover Mount Rushmore rock. But your eyes are drawn to the suitcase. It glints just a little. At first glance, it looks like nothing. Leather. Maybe titanium reinforced if you're feeling spy movie dramatic. But then you notice how other people glance at it, brief, flickering, instinctual. As if looking too long is impolite. Or dangerous. The man who guards it has no name badge. No visible weapon. Just the suitcase and a perfectly still expression. He doesn't blink. Seriously, you count. 37 seconds. 42. He adjusts his stance, but his face remains unmoved. Like he's watching not this moment, but the next 10 possibilities. Now, here's the weird part. Everyone calls it the football. That's right. The suitcase that holds the literal end of the world goes by a name you'd expect from Friday night high school stadiums. Why, we'll get to that soon. But tonight, you're following the football through a string of quiet hallways and secured elevators down long corridors with beige wallpaper and unremarkable carpeting. At the White House, the bodyguard walks a silent square from the president's bedroom to the Oval Office to the Situation Room and back again. You're always 5 feet away from it. That's the rule. But let's zoom out a second. Why does this suitcase even exist? Back in the 1950s, during the most neck-tingling years of the Cold War, military strategists realized something terrifying. If a nuclear war began, the US president might only have minutes, like 4, to decide how to respond. And he couldn't exactly jog down to the Pentagon, shout orders, or draw up a battle plan on the back of a napkin. So they made the football. It's not a weapon itself. It's more like a portal, a key, a trigger. Inside it holds everything the president needs to authorize nuclear war authentication codes, secure communication links, detailed plans, with friendly titles like PSYOP, that's Single Integrated Operational Plan, essentially a playbook for global destruction. And yes, there are plastic cards in there. One's called the Biscuit. We're not making this up. But don't let the snack names fool you. This thing is serious. The bodyguard knows it. He trains for it. He dreams about it. And in his nightmares, the president is yelling alarms are wailing and he's fumbling with a suitcase that won't open. One mainstream historical fact here in 1963, just after the Cuban Missile Crisis. JFK demanded a better way to ensure he could retaliate if the Soviets launched nukes. Before that, there was no consistent system. Scary right. That moment led to the creation of this very briefcase. Quirky tidbit. During one foreign visit, the football had to be passed through an airport X-ray scanner like any other bag. The agents on duty reportedly raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Can you imagine working baggage security and seeing that? And here's where things get juicy. Historians still argue whether the president can unilaterally launch nuclear weapons with the football, or if others like the Secretary of Defense must co-authorize. Some say yes, others say nope, and the government won't confirm either way. You're drifting now, but your mind still latches onto the image of the bodyguard, standing at the foot of the bed while the president sleeps, sitting quietly outside the door during a private meetings, never more than a short lunge away. Somewhere in the back of your thoughts, a quiet question forms. What if it opened? You've seen the briefcase. It haunts your thoughts now like a quiet itch you can't quite scratch. But the case is just half the story. To understand its weight, the real stomach-churning gravity of it, you need to understand him. The man with the wrist chain. The ghost with the steely jaw. The one who doesn't flinch when protesters scream when the crowd surges forward, or when something loud pops nearby. He is what the Secret Service calls a cat counter assault team operative. But informally, he's part of the football detail. A small elite group of agents trained not just in combat, not just in logistics, but in apocalypse. No pressure. You're watching him now from across the hall. He's standing like a statue outside the entrance to a luxury hotel suite. The kind of place with gold accents and too many pillows. Inside, the president is having a private dinner with an ambassador. Outside, the man with the suitcase waits. But he isn't bored. He's scanning. Always scanning. For odd movements, for bulges in clothing, for expressions that don't match body language. You'd think he's just daydreaming, but in his head he's running threat simulations faster than your phone runs Candy Crush. You learn his name, eventually. Not from him, obviously, but from a whispering aide, Jack. Former Navy SEAL. Harvard Law, believe it or not. Speaks Russian. Keeps 3 handguns and 2 combat knives on him at all times. No known hobbies. Lives alone. Owns a dog named Truman. Or maybe that part's made up, it depends which intern you ask. And Jack has a code phrase for every situation. Marlin 9 is dry means the president is in transit. Echo turn means there's a suspicious crowd pattern. Lockstep sequence is the worst one, it means something might be happening with the suitcase. The steel cord on his wrist never comes off. Not for showers, not for sleep. There are duplicate agents who swap in when he absolutely needs to rest, but even that handoff is a performance of practiced paranoia. 2 agents, 3 cameras, 4 encrypted handshakes. The suitcase is never left alone, ever. And don't get cute with Hollywood ideas. There's no glowing red button in there. No thumbprint scanner that opens up a launch screen, like in the movies. You can't just press it and boom, curtains for humanity. It's more complicated. It has layers. Which is why Jack's not just muscle, he's brains. He needs to be. Because if something goes wrong, he has to know whether to follow the president's command or not. Yes, you heard that right. In theory, if the president screams, "Open the football," and the right people haven't been contacted or Jack thinks something's wrong, like say the president's acting weird, slurring, or foaming at the mouth, he can stall. Maybe even refuse. The chain isn't just physical, it's judgmental. It's here that you learn something weird and surprisingly human bodyguards, even elite ones sometimes, like their presidents. And sometimes they don't. Quietly, respectfully, they'll tell stories of leaders who shook their hands, asked about their families, even remembered their birthdays. And then there are presidents who didn't make eye contact, who issued orders like commands to a vending machine. Jack never says where he stands, but his expression when asked is telling a blink slower than usual. A breath that pauses. And then he's back to scanning. Let's dip into history for a second. A mainstream fact, Ronald Reagan's bodyguard famously wrestled an assassin to the ground while still clutching the football, never letting go. That case has dents in it from where it hit the sidewalk, real dents, preserved in storage somewhere. A reminder that yes, even in chaos, the suitcase must survive. But let's balance that with something strange. Back in the early 90s, there were reports mostly whispered about a mix-up involving 2 suitcases. A transfer gone wrong. For approximately 15 minutes, the president was accompanied by an agent carrying the wrong briefcase. You'd think this would spark a full-blown crisis, but nope, classified and quietly corrected. Still, one aide claimed the only thing inside that wrong case was a stack of launch protocol manuals, as in how-to guides. Helpful unless you need to act now. And then there's the ongoing scholarly debate. How much of what we think we know about the football is true? The government won't confirm its contents. All the descriptions, cards, radios, checklists come from retired officials' leaks and, let's be honest, creative memoirs. Historians argue whether some of those elements are even still used, or whether they're Cold War relics swapped out long ago. But because everything's wrapped in layers of secrecy, all we get are glimpses, fragments, ghosts in official records. You watch Jack again. You're closer now. He's sitting in the corner of a staff room staring at a blank television. The suitcase is between his feet, still handcuffed. A staffer offers him coffee. He declines with a slight nod. You realize he hasn't spoken all day. You wonder what would it take to rattle a man like that. Answer something that has nothing to do with bullets or bombs. It's the moment the president goes off script. Jack's job isn't just to guard the football, it's to guide its use. He must confirm the president is of sound mind. He must relay the authentication procedure to military command using a code language that hasn't changed in decades. And if anything feels off, he delays. Stalls. Pretends there's a communication issue. Sir, I need a triple confirmation on that. Translation, are you sure? And sometimes presidents aren't. You lean back. Let the image fade. But the sound of the chain stays with you. A faint clink with every move, like a whisper, like a countdown. You can't sleep now. Not with that suitcase echoing in your brain, clicking open, unfolding like some bureaucratic origami of doom. Inside a few sheets of paper, some plastic cards, maybe a phone, and yet somehow enough power to unmake continents. You don't want to believe it, that this slim black briefcase called the football no less carries the mechanism to launch nuclear war. But you do believe it, because there's no other reason that every president, regardless of party age or Twitter presence, is trailed by a man willing to take a bullet for a box. The truth is, the football's not just hardware. It's the ultimate break glass in case of apocalypse kit. But unlike a fire alarm, this thing isn't simple. It's not a single red button that says, End Earth. If only, that might actually be safer. What it does have is worse, much worse. It has choices. You're in a briefing room now. At least you imagine you are. Everything smells like coffee paper and a little sweat, just enough to remind you that high-level meetings don't happen in clean rooms. A retired military officer stands at the head of the table pointing to a flowchart. You notice its title, Emergency Action Procedures. Strategic Response Options. It's got arrows everywhere like a fast food menu designed by a paranoid philosopher. Here's how it goes down. If someone launches a nuke toward the US early warning satellites, pick it up within 30 seconds. NORAD confirms. Phones start ringing. Within minutes, 3, maybe 4, the president is rushed to a secure spot. Could be a bunker. Could be Air Force One. Could be the back seat of a limo, heart pounding like a dropped metronome. And that's when the football gets opened. It contains a black book of strike options labeled with chilling sterile names like Major Attack Option 1 and Limited Counterforce Response. You choose one, you confirm it. You read a code printed on a laminated card known as the Biscuit. That card matches with codes already held by the Pentagon and Strategic Command. If it matches, you're authenticated. And just like that, missiles may fly. You'd expect a password like Red Rover 32 or Yankee Echo Delta, right? But no. At one point, one of the launch codes was reported seriously as Basade Hadus Thardus Audiskin. Because of testing purposes. Yeah, let that lull you to sleep. There's a common misconception that there's just one red button. But in fact, launching nukes involves multiple people turning keys, repeating confirmation codes, and executing a protocol so rigid it might as well be sacred. Except sacred things usually have more forgiveness built in. This doesn't. You're on Air Force One now. The president has been briefed enemy missiles inbound. Jack opens the football. The president pulls out the code card from his wallet. Aides and generals look on with breathless silence. Here's your historical fact. During the Reagan administration, there was an incident where no one could find the biscuit for several days. It had apparently been lost in a suit jacket that got sent to the dry cleaners. You heard me right. Nuclear launch capability was temporarily floating around in a laundry truck. But don't worry, nothing happened. That time. Now, picture this: the suitcase also contains secure communication equipment, allowing the president to speak with the National Military Command Center, which controls the U.S. nuclear arsenal. There's a small high-frequency radio, a secure SATCOM device, and backup codes in case the primary network is compromised. Still think it's just a box. Here's where it gets existential. Historians and military ethicists argue whether a president can really make a rational decision in just a few minutes. Under stress, half asleep, maybe jet-lagged, maybe hungover. Some say we've designed a system so fast there's no room for second thoughts. Others argue that's exactly the point: you can't have hesitation in a nuclear standoff. Cold logic wins wars. But if logic ruled everything, we wouldn't have nearly started World War III because of a moonrise. We'll get to that later. The quirky tidbit in all this: one of the original planners of the football system suggested installing a small vial of radioactive material in the case, so if you opened it, you'd feel the literal heat of nuclear power. Someone else suggested a rather gruesome idea: surgically implant the launch codes next to a human heart. The theory was, if the president had to personally kill someone to get the codes, he'd be less eager to start a war. Needless to say, that didn't go over well in committee. Still, you sense that weirdly philosophical tension at every level of the football's design. It's as much about forcing you to think before you act as it is about acting quickly, which brings you back to Jack. He doesn't open the case, he only offers it. Like a cursed treasure chest you pray never gets touched. Once it's opened, you're past the point of what if. You're into what now. The president's fingers tremble just slightly as he lifts the laminated card. The aide reads off a code string: Zulu Foxtrot, Niner 3. He checks the match. They confirm. The rest is silence. Not because it's quiet, but because what comes next can't be undone. You sit back in your imaginary chair, eyes heavy. The image of the open suitcase lingers. It's not glowing. It's not blinking. It's just waiting. Full of paper and terror. You're still thinking about that suitcase, about how a few sheets of paper and a plastic card might determine whether cities stand or vanish. But now, let's go deeper. You're sitting beside the football itself, legs crossed like a sleepy spy, and you get the rarest of privileges to peer inside. No alarms go off, no invisible lasers slice your hand. It just opens with a soft snap like any other travel case. But this is no vacation. Inside neatly stacked documents, laminated cards, and a hardbound black binder, often referred to as the Black Book. Not dramatic, is it? No glowing core. No giant red launch switch. Just bureaucracy. But, oh, the kind of bureaucracy that sweats uranium. You flip the binder open. First page: emergency action messages, pre-scripted instructions that the president can use to order nuclear strikes or mobilize forces. They read like the world's worst customer service prompts. If X happens, say Y, except Y ends with mushroom clouds. Next, a page with authentication codes. These are time-sensitive, randomly generated, and encrypted beyond imagination. You'd need multiple quantum computers or a wizard with a grudge to crack one. They're also printed on what looks like boring office cardstock. Someone once joked that the apocalypse could be triggered by something printed at Kinko's. Then you reach the targeting menu. It's exactly what it sounds like: options for where to strike and how. A single site, multiple counterforce military targets, or counter-value cities. You choose like you're ordering pizza: thin crust Moscow, double toppings Pyongyang. Hold the survivors. The nickname for the system: O-Plan, Operational Plan. Sounds sterile, right? That's the point. Cold terms for hot war. Then there's the biscuit. It's not actually inside the football, but it's part of this ritual. A small laminated card that stays on the president's person at all times. Think of it as a nuclear ID card. No biscuit, no launch. Here's a fact that'll make your jaw twitch during the Clinton administration. The biscuit was lost for several months. Yep. Just gone. No one said anything until it was way too late. The president had apparently misplaced it, and no one noticed because, well, who wants to ask the commander-in-chief? Hey sir, have you seen your doomsday pass lately? You flip another page in the binder and find a curious section, Pre-Delegation Authority. This is the part where it gets spooky. Pre-delegation is a set of orders that, under certain extreme circumstances, allows lower-level commanders to launch nuclear weapons if the president is killed or communications are severed. Like a final insurance policy. It's controversial, debated, and deeply classified, but insiders confirm it's in there folded between instructions and contingency notes. Just in case no one's left in Washington to make the call. You run your fingers across the textured plastic of a secure communication card, a little thicker than a hotel key. It's linked to a secure SATCOM channel, encrypted and firewalled to the teeth. The president can use it to speak directly to military command or the nuclear football team on alert around the clock. The voice on the other end, cold, professional, always listening, always ready to repeat back the same phrase. Authenticating now, Mr. President. Now, here's a fringe tidbit for you at one point during early trials of this communication setup in the 60s. One call accidentally routed to an Amtrak operator. A presidential aide ended up trying to confirm nuclear launch status with a very confused man trying to coordinate train schedules. The story was buried, understandably. And now, that binder, you think it's all war plans and technical procedures, but tucked into the back is something different. A single page, typed, center-aligned, almost poetic. And when fire is requested, remember the cost is not metal or fuel. It is children, cities, dreams. Choose only if the choice was already made for you. No one claims authorship of that page. It's been included for decades. Some say it was added after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Others think a secretary just snuck it in one day and no one ever removed it. But it's there, right beside the launch checklist. Now, for the open scholarly debate, some military historians argue that the football is more symbolic than functional. That by the time it's open, the president is already connected to the necessary systems through other means: satellite uplinks, airborne command posts, remote terminals. They say the football is theater, a ritual to focus the mind. Others claim the opposite, that the football is the real deal. The only conduit to lawful command in the chaos of a first strike. That without it, there is no launch. Which version is true, you don't know. You're not supposed to. The fog of secrecy isn't a mistake, it's a feature. You sit back watching Jack again. He's sitting on a metal bench outside a secure room. The case is upright between his boots, the handcuff glinting in the light. He's not thinking about the case. Not right now. He's thinking about lunch. About his niece's birthday next week. About whether the president will actually follow schedule today. But if someone screams, "Open it!" in the next 5 seconds, he'll move with terrifying precision. Because to Jack, the contents are memorized. He's trained on every protocol, he's rehearsed every step, but above all, he's practiced not panicking. You feel your breathing slow. Your eyes get heavy. But in your mind, the football sits open still. Pages flutter slightly, and that final poetic note whispers, "Choose only if the choice was already made for you." You're starting to get used to the sound of the suitcase chain. That faint clink as the bodyguard adjusts his wrist. A tiny echo of steel reminding you that any decision about life and death hangs just inches away. But tonight you drift backward through time. Not far. Just 6 decades or so. Back to a moment when no such suitcase existed. When the most powerful man in the world had no structured way to respond to a nuclear threat. Hard to imagine, right? The year is 1961. You're in the Oval Office. President John F. Kennedy is fresh-faced, charming, and quietly terrified. The Cold War is simmering hot, and Soviet missiles could arrive in 30 minutes or less, like the worst pizza delivery in history. The military tells him that if he needs to launch a retaliatory strike, he'll have to call someone. And they'll call someone. And those people will flip a few switches and hopefully remember what to do next. This is real. JFK reportedly asked, Kaispoin, how do I give the order? And the answer was a shrug, followed by a mess of steps scattered across different agencies. In short, there wasn't a system. Kennedy being Kennedy didn't yell. He didn't tweet. But he did quietly order the creation of a more efficient and terrifying command and control structure. a system that became eventually the football. Now you're watching it unfold. Military aides begin designing what they call a portable command center. The name football came from a Cold War contingency plan called drop kick. Because if you're going to vaporize the planet, might as well use sports metaphors. Within months, the black leather case appears. Compact, heavy, coated. The first bodyguards are trained protocols written. The chain is added later after someone suggests it might be a good idea to not leave the apocalypse unattended on a hotel couch. The football sees its first real tension test during the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. You're pacing now, following Jack's spiritual predecessor down long White House corridors, where the air smells like cigars and cold sweat. The president is calm on the outside. Inside, not so much. 13 days. That's how long the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. Soviet missiles in Cuba, U.S. blockades. One wrong move, one misread signal, and boom. And here's your mainstream historical fact. During those 13 days, the launch authority was on JFK at all times. The football was freshly minted, its systems barely tested, but there it was just steps behind him. The man carrying it didn't sleep, hardly blinked. He wasn't allowed in most photos. His job was to vanish into the wallpaper until the president said, "Now." Spoiler, he never did. But after that crisis, the system became real, hardened. The chain got tighter, the protocols thicker. Every president since has inherited it. And here's a quirky tidbit. Lyndon B. Johnson, JFK's successor, allegedly hated the football. Thought it was overkill. Said so in private. But he still kept it close. Even once yelled at an aide for placing it in the wrong seat on Air Force One, saying, "What? Son, if that suitcase ain't near me, it might as well be in the ocean." Charming. Back in your time now, you watch Jack lean slightly in a hallway pretending to look at his phone. But he's really watching everyone. That kid with the oversized camera. That woman in heels who keeps looking at exits. That perfectly average man with a face so neutral it's suspicious. He scans the environment every second because the suitcase now more than ever is a target. Not just for assassination plots, but for questions. For fear, for uncertainty. Historians still argue whether the football could ever be used too easily. Whether in moments of emotion or confusion, a president might accidentally or impulsively activate the chain of events. Official statements say checks are in place, but they never explain what those are. And when pressed, officials often say, "We can't comment on operational procedures." Comforting, isn't it? Here's a story not in textbooks. During the Reagan years, there was an attempted assassination. You remember the footage, chaos, gunshot, secret agents diving. What you don't see is the moment the football hits the pavement. The agent carrying it is also shot wounded. The suitcase goes tumbling. For a moment, just a second, it's out of reach. According to a staffer, a bystander tried to help the injured agent and touched the case. He was later debriefed for 6 hours by military intelligence. They don't mess around. But that tumble led to upgrades. Better tethering. Double-layer encryption, a more secure casing. All built in after the fact, because even the apocalypse needs a patch update sometimes. You're in the White House again now, but this time it's during the 2000s. Bush-era carpeting, newer drapes, same tension. The football sits quietly on the floor next to a couch. The agent sits alert. A cat walks past. Nobody blinks. The president's on a video call. Tense words. Swirling threats. Somewhere Jack, or someone like him, is flexing his fingers slightly. Preparing. Not for war, but for decision. Because that's what the football really is, a test. Of leadership, of reason, of humanity under pressure. You close your eyes now, letting the years rewind. From JFK to Biden, the case has never failed. But it's come close. And tonight, you're only just beginning to learn how close. You don't expect it to happen. No one does. But then again, chaos doesn't RSVP. It just shows up with muddy shoes and a grin. You're in a hotel ballroom somewhere in South America. The president is attending a summit. Suits and translations swirl like soft jazz. Behind the podium, a velvet curtain sways under the hum of central air. Outside the security bubble, local protesters chant and wave signs, their voices muffled by glass and distance. You're watching Jack again, or someone like him. Square stance sunglasses indoors, not blinking. The briefcase is by his side, cabled tight. He moves like a shadow cast by power. Always alert, always 5 seconds ahead. And tonight, he's just about to be part of the strangest chapter in football history. The event ends. The president is ushered out surrounded by agents. Standard exit protocol, short walk, armored SUV motorcade peel out. But then a sudden shift. Confusion. Not a threat, not a bomb. Something worse. A simple miscommunication. One vehicle in the convoy takes a wrong turn. Then another. Agents scramble to reposition. In the shuffle, someone yells, "Where's the football?" And for the first time in decades, it's not there. Cue the cold sweat. The president's vehicle has rolled out with no football. The briefcase is still in the hotel, tucked behind a service door, where the agent left it briefly just long enough to assist another aide with a security barrier. He turned, blinked, and the world's most dangerous luggage was suddenly not in his line of sight. 15 minutes. That's how long the president is without it. Here's your historical fact. This happened in 1999 during President Clinton's visit to a NATO summit. For a brief window of time, the football was separated from the president. Not stolen, not opened, just misplaced. The official report called it a deviation from standard protocol. Translation: pure caffeinated panic behind the scenes. And the consequences. Not as dramatic as you'd expect. No world-ending chain reaction, no sudden missile launch. Just a very stern internal review and several people who probably aged 5 years in 15 minutes. But that's the point, isn't it? This whole system relies not on magic or machinery, but humans. Agents, aides, procedures written in 12-point font and memorized by tired staffers. Humans who sometimes turn left when they should turn right. Humans who can lose a briefcase that can end the world. And here's your quirky tidbit. There was once a backup football stored in a safe, inside a secure White House sub-basement. A presidential aide was told, in case of emergency, to run and grab it. The aide asked how he'd access the safe. The answer: "We'll be in touch." Great. Just what you want during a crisis, a scavenger hunt. But back to you. You're standing in a hotel hallway. The air smells faintly of overcooked shrimp and fear. The agent has retrieved the football, reconnected with the motorcade, and everyone's pretending nothing happened. Except you can tell Jack's shoulders are tighter. His scanning's sharper. He's mentally rerunning every second of those 15 minutes. The president never says a word about it. Now, the scholarly debate here is fierce. Does a briefcase alone really matter when so many of these systems are redundant? Satellites, submarines, chain of command hierarchies. Some argue the football is ceremonial, a security blanket. The real launch pathways, they say, run deeper through encrypted comms and missile command bunkers. Others argue the opposite. That in the first few minutes of a nuclear crisis, the football is the president's only link to rapid response. It doesn't matter how many systems exist if you don't have the suitcase, you don't have time. You sit in a staff van now, bouncing gently as the convoy takes a sharp turn. Jack rides across from you, eyes never leaving the case. You wonder what's the punishment for losing it. Do they fire you? Reassign you to paperwork in Guam? Or just never talk about it again? It turns out no one really knows. Because it's not supposed to happen. The football is like your shadow. If it's missing, something unnatural has occurred. But something lingers. A quiet dread. Because if it can be lost even for a moment, what else can go wrong? A dead battery, a corrupt card, a satellite blackout. You remember a quote from an unnamed Pentagon staffer. The systems are redundant, the humans are not. And that's the crux. The football may be metal and Kevlar, but it's only as reliable as the person who holds it. The chain doesn't just secure the case, it secures accountability. And that weight, it's crushing. The sun sets outside. The convoy arrives at the embassy. Jack steps out, adjusts his cuff, and follows the president up the steps. The football sways slightly, just a few degrees off kilter. Still there, still sealed. But somehow, a little heavier than before. You lay your head down, eyes half closed. And somewhere in your mind you hear the agent's voice from years ago. Just 15 minutes, that's all it took. It's after midnight now. You're in a steel-clad room beneath a government building, whose official name doesn't match what anyone actually calls it. The kind of place where the ceilings hum and the hallways have no windows. You're with Jack, or someone trained just like him, and he's doing a visual inspection of the football. Same case, same chain, same haunting silence. But tonight there's a second one. Wait, what? That's right, there isn't just one football. Never has been. You look over and there it is a twin. Nearly identical. Same size, same shell, same coiled steel cord. One case is paired with the president's lead agent. The other belongs to the vice president's detail. Because if the worst should happen if an attack decapitates the leadership chain, the vice president must be able to take control. Instantly. No time to scramble for launch codes, no desperate calls to dusty basements. The second football ensures that the authority to retaliate can survive, even the first strike. They call it continuity of government. But you can't help thinking of it like a twisted backup drive. You copy and paste the apocalypse just in case. Here's your mainstream historical fact: the US has always maintained a secondary line of command in nuclear operations. After the president comes, the vice president, then the Speaker of the House, and down the chain. But only the top two have physical footballs, and only the top two can authorize launches through this specific method. You remember January 20th, 2021, Biden's inauguration. A day like any other unless you happen to be watching the footballs. Normally, one case is transferred precisely at noon, the moment the new president is sworn in. But in 2021, Donald Trump wasn't there in person. He'd left earlier that morning. Which meant for a few delicate hours, there were two footballs active. Trump's on Air Force One. Biden's ready at the Capitol. Both operational, both lethal, both watching the clock. It was a security puzzle wrapped in ceremony. And at precisely 12 p.m., Trump's codes were remotely deactivated, his football rendered inert. The handoff had occurred with no handshake. You shift now thinking about the second case. Is it identical? Well, mostly. But the vice president's football has a slightly different purpose. Less immediate strike authority, more contingency. It contains pre-delegated options in the event that communications with the president are cut off. Some have theorized that the VP's version is designed more for reassurance than reaction, ensuring enemies know that anyone can push back. Quirky tidbit. During a foreign trip in the early 2000s, the VP's football was accidentally loaded into a commercial baggage carousel. That's right. The briefcase chained to an agent looped past confused travelers between a ski bag and a pink duffel. Needless to say, protocol changed after that. No more ski trips with the end of the world in tow. You lean closer now and wonder what happens if both cases are opened at once. According to the scattered puzzle pieces from declassified fragments and retired officials, there's no scenario where both would be used simultaneously. Military command tracks the chain of authority obsessively. Only one person can be authenticated at a time. If two conflicting orders come through, protocols would freeze the process. Clarification would be demanded. But clarification takes time. And when missiles are coming, time is the enemy. Historians still debate whether this kind of confusion has ever occurred. Some say yes during 9/11, that in the fog of war, multiple channels began to buzz with overlapping authorities. Orders moving too fast, too loud, too many. Others say that even then the system held barely, and that all commands were tightly filtered through NORAD and Strategic Command. You imagine the chaos missiles in the air radar maps flickering, and two footballs open on opposite ends of the country, each waiting for the final order. Jack doesn't blink. He's seen these war games. They run them every year under code names like Global Thunder or Vigilant Shield. Simulations where both the president and VP are taken offline in theoretical attacks. The backup plans make your hair stand up. Alternate bunkers, mobile command centers disguised as 18-wheelers, shadow lines of succession nobody talks about, and somewhere always is the football. But here's something you weren't prepared to learn. Sometimes there's a third, a dummy, a decoy. In certain motorcades or emergency drills, a non-functional football is included to confuse surveillance or draw fire. It looks real, feels real, even weighs the same. But inside, nothing more than dense foam filler cards and preloaded gibberish. You saw one once, didn't you? You just didn't know. That black briefcase with the agent walking too stiffly too openly. It was bait, and it worked. Back in the real room, Jack closes the latches on the actual football. The sound is sharp definitive. You realize you're sweating just watching it. He glances at his watch. Time to swap. Another agent steps forward. Same build, same suit, same cold readiness. They execute the transfer key handcuff verbal code facial scan. You watch the handoff like it's a heart transplant. And just like that, the second football fades from view. Packed away, returned to standby. But now you know, there isn't just one end-of-the-world button. There are two. And somewhere in a secure vault with triple authentication, there's a manual for what happens if both are opened and the two people holding them disagree. You wake up mid-flight. Not your flight, the flight. The one no one talks about. The one that stays airborne longer than you've ever stayed awake. It's called Lost Night Watch. You're aboard a modified Boeing 747, but don't let the shell fool you. Inside, it's not a plane. It's a war room with wings. Carpeted halls command consoles, secure communication decks, radiation shielding a full operating room, and somewhere near the tail, another football. Yes, that's right. The airborne version exists too. You sip coffee that tastes like recycled stress and wander past consoles glowing pale blue. Most of the crew wears navy polos with discreet shoulder patches. No one says nuclear, but everyone knows. Jack is here too, or maybe it's another agent cut from the same bolt of ice. This plane is officially known as the E-4B National Airborne Operations Center. Unofficially, the Doomsday Plane. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Night Watch is always on alert. One of 4 identical planes sits fueled and ready at all times, 24/7, 365 days a year. If the homeland is attacked, the president is rushed aboard. The plane can stay airborne for days, refueled mid-air with no need to land. From here, a president can run a war or end one. Now imagine turbulence at 30,000 feet while holding the case that could decide the fate of millions. There's no good time for nuclear decisions but mid-flight. Not ideal. You peer toward the cockpit. There's a second pilot up front, and a classified radar system so sensitive it could probably spot a mosquito on a satellite dish. But the real show is at the center of the plane, a raised console with direct satellite uplinks. And tucked in a panel nearby, a port for a cable. The kind used to connect. Yep. The football. It turns out even this airborne war palace still needs the case. Because the football isn't just a kit, it's the key. You spot a copy of the black book strapped to the agent's thigh in a pouch. Same pages, same laminated terror. Except here the stress is different. Higher altitude, less margin for error. If the president gives the order here, the crew can act immediately, launching a global response from the sky. Here's your quirky tidbit during a test run in the 1980s. A crew member accidentally triggered a false emergency beacon from Night Watch. Within 90 seconds, 3 separate nuclear submarines began prepping launch sequences. The signal was shut down in time, but only just. The incident was quietly buried, the paperwork labeled with a single phrase, Operator Mislick. That's the thing about these systems, they're both over-engineered and terrifyingly fragile. Everything's redundant, sure, but all it takes is one bad wire. One clumsy hand, one stressed-out intern holding coffee and calamity. You move toward a small stateroom mid-deck. The president's quarters, modest, sterile, no windows. It has a fold-down bed, a desk, and a secure phone with a red switch. That switch. It connects to a line running through the football's uplink port. If you flip it and follow the protocol, you're not calling for help, you're confirming Judgment Day. Historians still argue whether Night Watch could even survive a full-scale nuclear strike. Some say yes, it's hardened against EMPs and built to stay in the sky. Others say it's just another plane, albeit a flying tank with a prayer. The truth buried in a vault classified under dust and tension. The handoff aboard Night Watch is different too. Smoother, cleaner. Everyone rehearses weekly. The agent never sleeps more than 4 hours in a row, and once a month they simulate full authentication drills. A presidential stand-in reads the code and they time how fast the case can be opened, verified and transmitted to Strategic Command. The record 84 seconds. The goal is always under 90. You spot Jack checking the time again. His fingers tap the latch, not nervous, just routine. But you catch at the brief pause. The flick of his eyes toward the horizon. Because there's always a horizon even when it's dark. Especially then. Back near the rear of the plane is a compartment that's not on the blueprints. A locked drawer, no labels. Inside, they say, is a final contingency. A sealed envelope written in the president's own hand. Instructions in the event of total communication collapse. It could contain launch directives or nothing. No one knows, not even Jack. It's only to be opened if the world stops answering the phone. And here's something else no one tells you. The football has no GPS. No tracking device. If it's stolen, it's lost. That's intentional. The fewer electronic signals, the fewer chances to hack it. So instead, it's protected by a chain and a man. That's it. Nothing smarter than muscle and memory. Jack stretches now. Looks down the aisle. A general nods. A pilot checks a screen. You're starting to feel the lull of altitude, the rhythmic hum of machinery built to survive the end. And then you see it. Taped to the inside lid of the football a note. Handwritten, shaky, just 6 words. Ray, this never opens for real. You close your eyes. Not because you're tired, but because for a moment the hum of night watch is the only thing separating you from silence. Above the clouds, the football rests. Waiting. The storm outside is nothing compared to the one in your chest. You're underground now, deep beneath Washington, in a facility that technically doesn't exist. No street signs, no elevator button. Just a hallway that smells faintly of old concrete and serious decisions. And in front of you, a thick metal door with no handle. Just a retinal scanner and a keypad that glows like an omen. You're in Mike's site, also known as Raven Rock. If the White House is ever vaporized, if the president and their entourage make it to a helicopter in time, this is one of the bunkers they'll be rushed to. And yes, the football comes with them. Everywhere the president goes, the case follows. Into jets, into bunkers, into limos, even into bathrooms. Though Jack tends to wait just outside the stall. Because at any given moment, even while shaving or sleepwalking or brushing teeth, the president must be able to launch a response. And so Jack waits. Jack? Inside this particular chamber, low ceilings, fluorescent lights, a hum of too many servers you watch, as Jack places the football on a steel table. For a moment, it doesn't look so scary. Just a box. Maybe even a toolbox. You half expect it to hold jumper cables and a sandwich, but then the latch opens, and inside authority again. You've seen the contents before, pages, cards, connectors, but now there's a new layer. Raven Rock has direct lines to NORAD, to Strategic Command, and to airborne assets. Plug in the football here, and it doesn't just enable us command. It syncs with the entire defense matrix. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Raven Rock was built during the Cold War as an alternate Pentagon. Carved into a mountain in Pennsylvania, it's designed to withstand direct nuclear hits and support government operations for weeks. The staff calls it the Rock. And here behind foot-thick blast doors, the president or their successor can run a world war with full comms, food supplies, and underground power. Quirky tidbit Raven Rock has a Starbucks. Or at least it used to. Because apparently if you're going to live through nuclear winter, you may as well get your mocha fix. The coffee machine was nicknamed Mutual Assured Caffeine. Now picture this. The bunker lights flicker once not from an attack but from a test drill. You feel it in your teeth. A low-frequency buzz that makes the walls seem closer. Jack doesn't flinch. He's done this before. He knows the rhythms, the timing, the weird way the air seems to shrink when the alert siren kicks in. He checks the laminated card again. The president is 3 rooms over on a secure call. Jack's orders are simple: stay within 6 meters of the principal. Never unlock the case unless told. Never move it to another agent without proper clearance. And never, ever lose sight of it. Even in a room designed to outlast history. You watch technicians buzz around terminals. Some are in uniform, some in rumpled suits. One has a tie decorated with cartoon missiles because even doomsday planners need hobbies. They run through what's called the emergency action message kind of sequence. EAMs are short encrypted messages that tell the armed forces what to do, where to aim, when to move. The process to create one involves triple authentication, and yes, the football plays a role in that too. Some say the codes are burned after use. Others say they're stored in vacuum-sealed vials destroyed automatically if unauthorized hands try to access them. What's true? Who knows? The system is designed so that even insiders only see slivers of the whole. You remember the scholarly debate on this one? Does burying command in layers of secrecy make the system safer or more brittle? Critics argue that too much compartmentalization can cause catastrophic delays in real emergencies. Others believe it's the only way to keep decisions insulated from panic or political impulse. After all, if any one person had full knowledge of the launch system, they'd be too powerful to exist. Jack looks down at his watch. It's been exactly 59 minutes since the drill started. Right on cue, a woman in a black blazer steps in and asks, "Would you mind confirming the transfer protocol?" Jack nods. Reaches into the inner pocket of his jacket, pulls out a plastic card with a barcode. She does the same. They scan both. The system chirps, once then speaks. Case verified. Agent maintain proximity. President remain within 10-second response range. You shiver. Not because it's cold, but because 10-second response range means exactly what you think. If it all goes wrong, you have less than a breath to decide. They close the case. The lights flicker again on purpose this time. The drill ends. Everyone exhales in practiced silence. Jack steps back. The football clicks as it's lifted. He's on the move again, back to the elevator that doesn't exist, into the hallway that has no map toward the sunlight that may or may not be waiting at the surface. You trail behind in your thoughts. In the quiet that follows, something catches your eye. Etched faintly into the wall near the table where the football had rested for just a few minutes are 6 words scratched by a tired hand. If we ever open it, we failed. You don't ask who wrote it. You already know. Morning in D.C. isn't gentle. The city hums with diplomatic tension and espresso, and everyone walks like they're late to the future. But you're not above ground today. You're in the situation room, yes, that one. Low ceilings. Monitors on every wall. Phones that don't ring, they light up. The kind of place where you instinctively lower your voice even when you're alone. Jack is here too, standing against the wall, the football by his leg like a leashed pit bull. You're beginning to notice the pattern: always close, never in the way. Always alert, never obvious. He's the last person you'd pick from a crowd and the only one whose heart rate hasn't spiked since 5 a.m. The president is seated at the long oval table, facing intelligence directors, generals, and aides, who use more acronyms than actual words. There's tension in the air, not war, but something adjacent to it. A rogue satellite, a downed drone, a radar ping that no one can explain. The kind of thing that gets swept under headlines but shakes hands behind closed doors. And here's your mainstream historical fact: the Situation Room isn't one room, but a complex of secure conference spaces under the West Wing. It was built during Kennedy's presidency after the Bay of Pigs disaster revealed how clumsy U.S. intelligence coordination really was. Since then, it's hosted everything from bin Laden's takedown to near-nuclear incidents. Every president since JFK has made decisions here that shaped the world. Quietly, without fanfare, on the far wall is a monitor. On it, an interface known as the Gold Codes CAC system. If the president gives the word, that system is engaged, but only after the football is verified. That's the thing people miss: the football doesn't launch anything. It permits the launch. Like a valet key to the missile fleet. Without it, the president might as well be shouting into a soup can. You glance at the laminated checklist Jack carries. It's updated weekly. Things like confirm code set rotation, secure biometric template verification, confirm SAT-link redundancy, review emergency evacuation routes, and then circled in red, no photos, ever. Which brings us to today's quirky tidbit. Once during a televised event, a cameraman caught a close-up of a card poking from a bodyguard's folder. Turns out it was the E-Emergency SATCOM access sheet. A low-level comms tool, but still classified. The photo aired for 7 seconds before being pulled. But that's all it took. 3 different countries were seen hours later analyzing the clip in surveillance feeds. Yes, even the back of the football is considered intel. You're pulled from the thought as the president looks toward Jack. Let's review the options, they say. Jack steps forward, unlocks the case. It opens with that now familiar click like a magician's final flourish. Except instead of rabbits or scarves, it's printed doom and 40 years of strategic algorithms. The room quiets, everyone leans forward. What's being discussed isn't war not yet, but readiness. If X happens, what do we do? If Y continues, what's our counter? And the football's role is to make sure none of that stays hypothetical. If the president so much as nods at the wrong line, the codes inside will be extracted and sent within minutes across a command chain that circles the globe. Historians still argue whether this level of presidential power is even constitutional. There's no clause in the founding documents about nuclear authority. Congress is meant to declare war after all, but launch decisions. They bypass that. In a real crisis, the president doesn't ask for permission. They just say the words. Some legal scholars call this a necessary shortcut. Others call it the death of checks and balances. No one has settled it. No one likely ever will. The president gestures. The lid closes again. Jack latches it. Business as usual. Except you notice something different today. Jack is tense. Not visibly, not to most, but his fingers twitch ever so slightly near the latch. His stance is off by half an inch, and his eyes, usually scanning the exits, linger too long on the screen, showing potential strike trajectories. You wonder, what does he think about all this? Because Jack has no vote. No voice in the decision. He carries the football guards, it keeps it close. But if the president loses their mind tomorrow or decides that diplomacy is overrated, Jack's job is to follow orders. Period. There's a phrase agents whisper in training. You're not the conscience. You're the conduit. It sticks with you. The meeting ends. Everyone filters out jackets slung over chairs, coffee cups forgotten. Jack waits, then moves. You follow. Outside, the sunlight is harsh. Reporters shout questions. Protesters wave signs. Children on field trips walk by clutching guidebooks that don't mention anything about suitcase-sized extinction. Jack keeps walking. You watch him pause by a fountain, adjust his cuff, breathe. Then without looking, he turns and says softly, "If it ever opens for real, I hope I'm not the one holding it." He says nothing else. And neither do you. Because suddenly the football doesn't feel like an object anymore. It feels like a sentence. You're not sure when the line blurs, when history becomes myth, and myth becomes protocol. But tonight that line is very blurry. You're standing in a museum, not a public one. This place doesn't appear on maps or tourist guides. It's located in a hangar-sized warehouse outside of Omaha, Nebraska. Inside rows of obsolete tech-rusted missile components. Cold War radios helmets that smell like old socks and secrets. This is where the U.S. military keeps its ghosts. And in a glass case under dim lighting sits something that doesn't belong here. An early prototype of the football. No labels, no plaque. Just a small, square black briefcase, thinner than today's version without the now standard titanium core or biometric lock. You're told this one belonged to a training president, a civilian participant in continuity of government exercises during the 1970s. The prototype was never meant for field use, but it was tested, simulated, touched by real hands who were this close to the keys of Armageddon. You lean closer. The leather is worn, the handle frayed. It doesn't look powerful, it looks tired. A military archivist steps up beside you. He's in his 70s, still standing straight like a parade might break out at any second. He nods toward the case and says, "It almost got used." You raise an eyebrow. He continues. 1979. NORAD receives a warning, tuned up 200 Soviet missiles inbound. Computers confirm. Generals rush into bunkers. One of these cases is opened. The president is pulled from sleep. They're minutes from issuing the launch code. The code, when someone yells, "It's a glitch." A training tape had been accidentally loaded into the early warning system. You freeze. That's not fiction. That actually happened. Here's your mainstream historical fact on November 9th, 1979. A false alarm sent the U.S. Nuclear Command into full alert. Air Force bombers were scrambled. Missile crews were readied. The football was almost activated. But no missiles came. No war started. Just a tape. Just a mistake. And here's your quirky tidbit, the officer who discovered the error. He did it because the radar showed missiles launching from inside the U.S. A rookie tech looked up and said, "Sir, I don't think the Soviets built launch pads in Montana." The humor didn't land until hours later. The archivist leans in. "We've had 7 confirmed false alarms that we know about." You ask, "What happens if someone opens the football during one of those?" He shrugs. "That's why it's guarded by humans." Humans, that again. You move down a row of exhibits. One case displays a 1960s-era launch authenticator, basically a crypto key with dials. There's a section on Operation Looking Glass, a now-retired airborne command system that mirrored Night Watch. And then you find the strangest thing yet. A piece of paper, laminated, faded, typed on it. "In the event of communication failure, follow protocol outlined in Red Folder 6B. Proceed under assumption of hostile strike until proven otherwise. Presidential authority may be assumed under full delegation code as determined by EAL card. Do not hesitate." You read it twice, then a third time. It's not dramatic. It's clinical. Bureaucratic. The kind of thing you'd find in an old HR binder, except this one tells someone somewhere that it's okay to start a war if no one picks up the phone. Historians still argue whether full delegation of nuclear authority has ever been activated. During 9/11, possibly. During Reagan's surgery after the assassination attempt, maybe. The details are locked down murky at best, but the fact that procedures exist for a non-president to order global extinction, that chills you more than any mushroom cloud. Jack is standing at the far end of the museum now. He hasn't moved since you walked in. The case is still chained to him, newer than the ones behind glass, shinier and quieter, but not better. Because as much as the tech evolves, the fear doesn't. The archivist speaks again softer now. "We train for the worst day in human history, but hope it never comes. That case is the last voice of a civilization." You ask him something you never thought you'd say out loud. "Do you think it'll ever be opened for real?" He looks at you for a long moment, then nods. "I think someday someone's going to open it. And what happens next will decide if we keep telling stories." The room is silent now, save for the hum of old machines trying to outlive their purpose. You turn Follow Jack out into the wind and wonder how many more false alarms the world can handle before one turns out to be true. You're back in the West Wing, but something's different tonight. The lights are dimmed lower than usual. Fewer people in the halls, fewer whispers. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace, it means something's coming. Jack is here, of course. Always is. His silhouette is almost fused to the wallpaper now, briefcase hanging like gravity forgot it. You're sitting on a bench near the Roosevelt Room, watching aides rush by in hushed patterns. Someone just spilled coffee and no one yelled. That's how you know it's serious. The president is in the Oval with the Joint Chiefs. No scheduled press conferences, no media leaks. Just sudden, unexpected movement. You ask Jack what's happening. He doesn't answer. Instead, he adjusts the football strap. Not nervously, not casually. Like a pianist cracking their knuckles before the concert. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In 1983, the world came seconds away from a nuclear war because of a satellite misread. The Soviet early warning system registered incoming U.S. missiles. Just one officer, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, decided to disobey protocol and report it as a false alarm. He guessed right. If he hadn't, you wouldn't be here. The president emerges. Fast walk, sharp look. Everyone straightens. Jack falls in behind football, bumping his side. You feel your chest tighten. This isn't a drill. Or if it is, it's a really convincing one. You walk with them, down a hallway you've never seen. Past a door that requires not 1, not 2, but 3 forms of authentication: fingerprint, voice, and badge swipe. The room beyond is thick with radiation shielding. On the wall, a glowing red screen that simply says, "That's your next clue." DEFCON stands for Defense Readiness Condition. It ranges from 5 normal peacetime to 1 nuclear war imminent. DEFCON 3 means force readiness increased above normal. We've only been there a few times: the Yom Kippur War in 1973 post 9/11, and during some deeply tense moments of the Cuban Missile Crisis. You're officially in preparation mode. And the football, it's now Central Command. Jack places the case on the table. A technician plugs in a fiber optic cable. A screen comes to life, minimal interface, clean design. Something that looks like a 1998 cell phone menu but is far more terrifying. Options scroll by in crisp red font. Strategic retaliation. Theater response. Forward posture options. Emergency redeployment. Auth code inject. One wrong touch and you could reroute half the globe's missile fleet. And here's your quirky tidbit. There's a failsafe embedded in the football, known internally as God's pause. It's a timed delay exactly 60 seconds between authentication and actual code transmission. Why? Because if the president is ordering a strike, they should sit with that choice for 1 full minute. Just 60 seconds of silence, long enough to rethink the unthinkable. You glance at the president's hands. They're steady. But the room smells like printer toner and sweat. A general reads from a folder marked, Eagle scenario, probably a war game. Probably. The president is asked to verify the day's gold code. Jack steps forward, opens a smaller pouch inside the football, and pulls out what looks like a credit card. This is the Biscuit Wanil, the card containing the day's authentication codes. Not the launch codes themselves, but the identifier, proving the president is real. Without it, even the football can't unlock the nuclear playbook. Here's where it gets even more fragile. Historians still argue whether the biscuit has ever been lost. Some say President Carter once sent it to the cleaners in a suit pocket. Others claim President Clinton misplaced his entirely for months. The Pentagon downplayed it, but privately Brass called it the most stressful missing wallet case in American history. Tonight the card is here, present, verified. You feel the air pressure shift almost like the building is bracing itself. And then it stops. The red screen blinks twice. A new line appears. No launch authorized. Situation de-escalated. The president exhales. The general nods. Jack closes the football no drama, no sigh of relief, just another sealed day in an unsealed world. You ask Jack. Did you think they were going to say yes? He shrugs. Doesn't matter what I think. And again, that phrase replays in your mind. You're not the conscience, you're the conduit. Back upstairs, the staff returns to their coffee cups. People joke again. Someone is laughing about the coffee machine being broken. Life reboots. You stare out the window. DC still exists. The monuments still stand. Kids are probably on scooters outside. And somewhere in that football still humming, still chained to Jack's wrist is the moment that almost was. It's both comforting and deeply terrifying. Because if that red screen had said something different, if it had blinked twice and read auth code injected, you wouldn't be here reading this. You wouldn't be anywhere. You're riding in a limo now. The windows are tinted so dark the outside world feels like a rumor. Beside you, Jack is silent, he always is. Across from you, the football rests like a sleeping beast in its seatbelt-strapped glory, humming with invisible tension. You've started noticing the little things. The way the case clicks just once when it's latched. The smell of synthetic fabric and gun oil. The faint pressure in your ears when you enter high-security zones. You've been following this briefcase so long it's almost starting to feel alive. The presidential motorcade turns, not towards an airfield, not to a summit. You're heading to Andrews Air Force Base, but you're not going up in Air Force One. Not this time. Instead, you're boarding a chopper. Marine One. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The president's helicopter call sign Marine One isn't a single aircraft, but a fleet. The trick. They fly several choppers at once in formation, swapping positions mid-air to prevent anyone from knowing which one carries the real cargo. Decoys, radio tricks, and silent routes keep things safer than you'd think. But only one of them has Jack in the football. You lift off. The blades roar. DC shrinks beneath you monuments like chess pieces on a velvet board. You pass the Potomac, the rooftops of Georgetown, the anonymous concrete blocks of intelligence offices that technically don't exist. You wonder what would happen if the chopper went down. Is the football built to survive a crash? A fire? A fall into the river? Jack doesn't say, but he does reach down and run his fingers once along the edge of the case. There's a hidden latch. Mechanical, not electronic. A fail-safe. If the agent carrying the football is incapacitated and another needs access immediately, there's a coded sequence of physical inputs. Turn slide press twist. Miss one step. The case locks permanently. Some say it even releases a die pack that destroys key pages inside. Others say it simply shuts down. Quirky tidbit for today. In the early 1990s, during a training operation, an agent accidentally did trigger the internal lock mechanism. The case became inoperable. It took a full team of engineers from Lockheed and the Department of Energy 3 days to reset it. The entire time the president was tailed by 2 footballs, one locked, one live, while pretending nothing was wrong. You bank left. The skyline disappears. You're heading toward a country estate. You arrive. The chopper settles. The doors open. The breeze carries in the scent of cut grass and low-slung tension. The president exits first. Jack follows. You trail close behind, watching as the football is carried past flower beds and rose trellises toward a historic house nestled in the trees. This is Camp David. A name everyone knows but few have truly seen. Used for decades by presidents as a retreat camp, David has hosted peace talks, Cold War confessions, and barbecue diplomacy. But beneath the cabins and tennis courts is another reality. Hardened shelters, secure communications rooms, and yes, launch capabilities. Because even at Camp David, the world can end. Jack steps into one of the cabins and sets the football down on a desk, with a light touch like someone placing a loaded weapon in a child's room. The president won't be here long. Just a day, maybe 2. Long enough to appear at ease, but not long enough to forget what's chained to the agent outside. There's an eerie intimacy to the football here. It feels out of place, like a chainsaw in a church pew. The cabin smells like cedar and lemon oil, and yet that black case radiates tension. You watch as Jack stands guard outside. Birds chirp. Somewhere a lawnmower hums. And yet inside that case, the world's largest arsenal of nuclear weapons waits for a sequence of numbers, a voice match, and a single decision. Historians still argue whether Camp David would be used in a real nuclear scenario. Some say it's too exposed. Others insist it has full command capabilities hidden beneath the floorboards. Some say there's even a direct link to Raven Rock nearby, buried under the Blue Ridge. You sit on the porch steps now, watching the sun begin to set over the woods. It's beautiful in a way that makes your chest ache. And then you hear it, a high-pitched tone, barely audible. You glance up. Jack's posture has changed. The briefcase is open. You freeze. But he's not pulling codes. He's pulling a sat phone. The tone was a test of systems ping. They run them twice a week, just to make sure. Because the football may never be used, but it can never fail. Jack finishes the call, closes the case, exhales just once, and the world keeps spinning. But you know now, deep in your bones, that the only reason it spins at all is because someone somewhere is always watching a suitcase. You're back in the city. Rain falls in sheets as if the sky's trying to rinse off secrets it's tired of holding. The streets of Washington shimmer with slick reflections, taillights, traffic signals, wet marble. You trail Jack through the crowd, weaving between umbrellas, feeling every drop like static against your skin. You're heading into the belly of the beast tonight, the Pentagon. Jack moves through checkpoints like a ghost with credentials. His ID is never questioned, his steps never halted. You follow him down corridors so wide and polished they feel like airport runways, except instead of souvenirs and pretzels, every doorway leads to another level of power. The football clicks as it brushes his leg. You can feel it even through the case, like a low-frequency hum under your feet. Power wrapped in nylon and steel. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Pentagon houses the National Military Command Center, or NMCC. It's the communications nerve center for all military operations, including nuclear launches. If the White House is disabled or unreachable, the Pentagon becomes the spine of command continuity. And tucked into a reinforced vault behind layers of physical and digital authentication lies a backup system eerily similar to the football. You walk into a conference room and see it not a briefcase but a wall. A panel with blinking light-sealed drawers and a voice recognition unit. A football that doesn't walk, it waits. Jack nods toward it. This one stays. Unlike the mobile version, this backup doesn't move. It's always on, always plugged into the pulse of the defense network. And it can receive commands from the roaming footballs if those signals are ever sent. Tonight's exercise is routine on paper, a systems test. But nothing feels routine about verifying global annihilation protocols with a machine that greets you with your heartbeat and says, Hello, Commander. You watch Jack sync the mobile football to the Pentagon's hub. A cable is plugged in. A confirmation blinks. A screen glows. And then you see it just for a second. A file name flash on the monitor. Operation Cinderblock. It disappears just as quickly. Redacted. Sealed. You raise your eyebrows. Jack doesn't explain. But later, over vending machine coffee, he tells you the gist. That's one of the fallback plans. If DC is hit and we lose the top 5 in the chain of command, Cinderblock activates the buried line. You ask the buried line. He stirs sugar into his coffee with one of those tiny red straws that makes everything feel too casual. Then, softly. It's not a person, it's a protocol. If no leader remains to push the button, the system pushes itself. You're not sure if he's joking. You're not sure you want to know. Here's your quirky tidbit. In the 1970s, one Pentagon official proposed a horrifying safeguard. He suggested implanting the nuclear launch codes inside a volunteer's chest, literally embedding them near their heart. The president would be required to kill that person with their own hands to retrieve the codes. His logic: if you're not willing to kill one innocent human, how can you kill millions? The idea was rejected, of course, but sometimes you wonder if it shouldn't have been. The hallway you're walking now is lined with portraits. Past generals, past wars, but no pictures of the football. Never. Still too secret even when everyone knows it exists. Photos are rare. References are whispers. Historians still argue whether there's a second launch hub hidden inside the Pentagon, a shadow of the NMCC. Some insist it exists, call it ghost control. Others say it's a myth, an echo of Cold War paranoia. No one's confirmed either way. But if you ever walk far enough in this building, past enough checkpoints and enough silence, you start to believe it might be real. Jack moves ahead. You follow down a hall with no signs, no guards, just a faint red light at the end. The kind of hallway where decisions outlast the people who make them. He stops before a steel door, swipes a card, waits, and then without turning around, he says, "You know what the football doesn't have?" You wait. It doesn't have a way to say no. He opens the door. Inside is another room, another console, another place to authorize the unimaginable. You step in. The door hisses shut behind you. The case sits on a metal table, unlatching itself in your memory. You're in a desert now. Not metaphorically. Actually. Red sand. Open sky. Air so dry it feels like static against your tongue. A military convoy kicks up dust behind you, stretching toward the horizon like a line of tin ants. Somewhere out here, far from press pools and polished oaths, lies one of the U.S. government's most silent frontiers. A continuity of government bunker buried in the rock. Jack is here, of course. The football clutched in his grip, his boots sinking into the grit like they've done this exact walk 100 times. You think maybe he has. You're underground again within the hour. The elevator ride takes nearly 3 full minutes. Long enough for your stomach to forget what light felt like. When the doors open, you're inside a chamber that hums like a sleeping giant. Fluorescent lights, concrete curves, rooms sealed behind push-to-talk intercoms and guards who don't blink. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Beneath the Nevada desert lies a network of facilities built during the Cold War for preservation of executive authority. It's not just one bunker, but dozens, many still classified. Some are said to house decoy leadership cells. Others store databases of post-attack governance logistics, including scripts for public broadcasts, troop redeployment orders, and the dreaded presidential emergency action documents. Tonight is another drill. Jack sets the football on a reinforced table in what looks like a cross between a conference room and a submarine command deck. The lighting here is dim on purpose to preserve night vision in case of grid failure. You've been briefed on the scenario. Washington, D.C. has suffered a decapitation strike. Primary command nodes are unresponsive. You are now part of the shadow team. No one uses the word nuclear. They don't have to. Jack's actions are mechanical now. Unlocks the case, removes the code sheet, interfaces with a hardened console that isn't connected to the internet or any known network. It's basically an intranet of apocalypse. On the screen, 2 large options appear. Activate emergency authority. Stand by and await confirmation. And right there next to them, a countdown 0459. 4 minutes and 59 seconds to decide if the bunker will assume temporary command. The football isn't just about starting a war. It's also about continuity, making sure somebody somewhere is still calling the shots. It contains protocols for governance under martial law, instructions for how to reconstitute the cabinet, where to fly surviving legislators, what happens if no vice president exists, your quirky tidbit for tonight. Some versions of these documents include a directive known unofficially as the McPherson Script. If broadcast, it would inform American citizens that the Constitution is under temporary suspension due to extraordinary circumstances and that normal civil rights will resume as soon as national security allows. The script has never been used, but it's printed, stored, ready. Jack doesn't even blink as the countdown hits 0200. He knows this is just a simulation. But what if it weren't? Historians still argue whether the idea of post-constitutional governance is even legal. After all, the U.S. Constitution doesn't contain a pause button. But then again, it never had to reckon with global thermonuclear war either. Some scholars insist any emergency powers used without Congress would be unconstitutional. Others say survival trumps legality in every corner of reality. You notice something else on the screen now. A third option faded gray. Defer to auto sequence. It's disabled, but it exists. You ask Jack what that means. He doesn't answer for a long time. Then, if no one is left to decide, the system decides for them. You blink. So, the machine launches. He nods just once. Or doesn't. No one's told us what it would do. You shiver. Not from cold, but from the thought that even extinction has a backup plan. The countdown expires. The drill ends. A voice crackles over a speaker. Stand down. Reset to DEFCON 5. Jack powers down the interface. Closes the football. The world exhales again, deep under the crust of Earth. The convoy returns to the surface in silence. Sunlight feels hostile now. Loud. You climb back into the Humvee, wondering how many other briefcases exist, hidden, waiting forgotten in their own bunkers and motorcades and secure rooms. Wondering who would open one if it came to it. Wondering who wouldn't. The football rests beside Jack again. He looks out the window. You try to imagine his thoughts, but realize you don't have to. Because you've heard enough now to understand Jack isn't just protecting the president. He's protecting the moment between peace and oblivion. The silence between heartbeat and button. The space where civilization either endured or evaporates. And as the convoy winds through the desert, fading into dusk, the hum of tires becomes the only sound louder than the thought you can't shake. Like, Yima, what if this story ends, because someone actually opened the case? Now let your shoulders relax. You followed the briefcase that should never be opened. You've trailed footsteps through cities and deserts, corridors, and clouds, where silence is guarded by armed men and laminated cards. You've seen the rituals, the drills, the unthinkable cloaked in nylon and carried in quiet hands. And yet somehow, you're still here. The night outside your window hasn't changed. The streetlights still glow like sleepy stars. Somewhere a fan hums in the background, steady soft like a secret being kept. Maybe a car passes, maybe not. Maybe you hear nothing but breath, and that's enough. You're allowed to feel uneasy, but also oddly grateful. Grateful that for decades, a chain of people has done the same silent thing, carry the burden. Wait for the call that never comes. Protect the choice we all hope never gets made. No one wants to be the hand that opens the football. And maybe no one ever will. So close your eyes now. Let the world shrink to the size of your room. Let the future feel distant. Let history stay where it belongs, locked away, quiet, asleep in its case. You're safe tonight. The case is closed, and the hum of the world continues, one heartbeat at a time. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.